Okay.
All right, welcome to the Peaceful Power Podcast. Today I have Jill Coleman on with me, and she served as my coach this past year. So I'm super excited to bring her on, and we're going to chat like mindset about business, nutrition, fitness, everything. So I'm going to have you kind of start, Jill, by telling us a little about your evolution with Jill Fit, because I think that is something that I really admire about just your transition from just being fitness into business, and tell us how that kind of occurred.
Sure. I think anyone who so I started as a trainer, always loved fitness, never had like a big weight loss story or anything kind of like that. For me, I was one of those lucky people who just fell in love with exercise at a young age. So went through, got my degree in exercise science, got my master's in nutrition, and I started competing and doing fitness competitions. And so I kind of did the yo-yo crazy all or nothing dieting thing for a lot of years throughout my 20s. And while it was really a fun thing to be doing, to see your body change and to be that dedicated to something, over time, it started to get a little obsessive. It's nice to see your body change, but it can get to the point where you don't feel good enough if you don't look a certain way. And this translates into all different things, right? We can see it in our job, we can see it in our relationships or in our body. For me, it just happened to come from a place of if I don't have a perfect, quote, perfect body or look the way I think I should look, that I don't feel good enough. And so for me, I made a huge switch probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and started my business at jillfit.com. At that point, I was still into fitness. I was personal training in the gym, 70 to 80 hours a week, crazy kind of what I call the fitness hustle, where you're running around and you're training people all over the place. And it was great and I loved it, but I was exhausted. And so I started my blog and I started getting home from training clients at like 9 o'clock at night and started writing blogs. So I didn't have any programs, didn't have any products, didn't know anything about business. All I knew was I have some stuff in my brain that I can get and help people at a distance without, maybe be able to reach people outside my local area. And at that point, Facebook had just gotten started. We didn't have things like Instagram or webinars or all the kind of stuff we have now. So blogging was really big, and I just started to get a readership because I was super consistent. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as a great way to start now, just because people are consuming information differently. But back then, I was really fortunate to get in at a good place when Facebook business pages were just taking off, email marketing was just taking off. And I was able to transition out of the body obsession piece into being able to make it about other people. So it wasn't so much about having an ego pursuit of like, do I look good? Taking selfies and stuff like that. It became more about other people and being able to share that. And over time, I think it's kind of natural that once you start a business, you have to actually learn business in order to keep it going and to be viable. So about 2 or 3 years in, I started doing a ton of business coaching with different people, mentors, stuff like that. And then I started my own program called Best of You, which is my year-long mentorship. And I've been doing that now for about 6 years.
That's amazing. And one of the things that I kind of picked up on was just like the body obsession, because I think that's something that really hits a lot of the women that I talk to, is just kind of like, I should look this way. How or what advice do you have for people trying to get past that body obsession?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that for me, I look at it from the perspective of whenever, and by the way, like I said, this can manifest in so many different ways. Someone who needs to have a really nice car, or someone needs to get a bigger and bigger house, right? We're doing a lot of those things without knowing. And for a long time, I was pursuing, quote, the perfect body because I just didn't feel good enough on the inside. I didn't feel, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like my self-esteem wasn't there if I wasn't. And, a lot of it is learned too, especially in our culture, right? You get praised for having a nice car. You get praised for looking a certain way. You get praised for having a certain title at your job, or you get praised for being in an amazing, power couple relationship, whatever that is. And we kind of start to get these and gather these affirmations and these approvals. And so I got addicted to that, very embarrassingly to say, I started getting addicted to, wow, you look amazing. What are you doing? When's your show? Oh, you got a tear sheet in a magazine, you're on the cover of this magazine, a lot of those kind of things. And it doesn't even need to be that extreme, but you're starting to get some affirmation. And then you feel as if when you gain weight, you're chopped liver, right? Where's the comment? Where's the approval? Where's the affirmation? And so you go, well, I just need to go on a diet again really quick, because that's the way that I know to start getting that affirmation and approval again. So it's just approval seeking. It's needing this external validation. And so for me, that is about control at a high level. It's about being able to control how I'm perceived in the world, right? If I can just look a certain way, if I can have a certain job title, if I can be a certain level of success, then I can be affirmed and I can be good enough. And I think what we notice, whether that's in any of these different pursuits, that at some point that it just gives out. We're not able to get the kinds of validation or control the perception as much as we would like to. And so for me, on the opposite end of the spectrum is the trust piece, right? So controlling is about how other people perceive you and trying to do the things you can to gain that external validation. The other side of the spectrum is about trust. And so my journey has been from needing to control everything to just trusting in myself, trusting in the process, trusting that I am good enough, and that I'm always doing my best. So I might not, be 10% body fat, but I also feel good in my skin. I have friends and family who don't care if I gain 15 pounds, right? That doesn't change how they interact with me. I'm able to still have a successful business and help a lot of people and not have to look a certain way. So you have to, I think in my mind, I think you have to go through the evolution of that. I think it's hard to just come to balance without having some sort of extreme in some capacity.
Yes. And for me, like having my like Eastern eye on things, I'm like, oh, that's totally the masculine that you were in. And now you've moved into like the feminine and from the push to the receive, I'm like, oh, I totally can see all of that alignment. I don't know if you can, but
I still feel like I'm like in my masculine a lot.
Oh yeah, I would definitely, because I know you a little bit, from working with you, I would definitely say you definitely are in the masculine still. But those language that you're using around it is kind of that balance. So now kind of on the flip side, what about someone who like totally is lacking motivation? And they're like, I know I need to get to the gym, but I just can't seem to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's hard because I think a lot of times the reason we don't do something might be because we have a perception that we're not going to be good at it, or it's going to be painful, or we're not going to stick with it, or we're probably going to, give up because that's what we've always done. And so a lot of this is digging deep into like, what are the real reasons why? And believe me, like it is painful sometimes. Like you're sore, you're going to be sore. You have to kind of go through all that. So I understand why people don't want to get started. They don't like the gym, but I would try and identify what are those barriers? Is it that you just like literally don't like exercise? It feels boring to you. You don't like the place that you go. The environment's not really great for you. It's not on your way home from work. Like, is it an environmental, geographical thing? And identify what exactly it is. A lot of times what I find with my clients is that they just don't like exercise. And so when they find something that they do like, I don't know, a Zumba class or a spinning class or Soul Cycle or something where maybe it's a group dynamic, or they're getting stronger and they're seeing their body transform and they're seeing their physique change. They're not necessarily losing a ton of weight, but they're getting stronger. Every week they're coming back to the barbell or coming back to dumbbells, and they're able to use ones that are a little bit heavier. That kind of intrinsic motivation of enjoyment and progress, and also having a community or some sort of support system around you. Those three things I would say are the biggest things. So seeing some sort of progress, that you are getting better. The second thing is going to be enjoyment. So if you don't love it, you're not going to stick with it. So I don't care if it's not the most ideal thing. If it is something that gets you consistent, start there. Because over time, you start in Zumba, maybe at some point you'll take a weight training class. And then at some point you'll go out onto the floor and use the weights there. And then before you know it, you're starting to do powerlifting or something. So I think having that enjoyment piece at the beginning is super important. And then the third piece is the community or support or feeling as though you're part of that family or part of that team. If you show up to the gym and you don't know anyone and no one says hey to you, and maybe some people like that, but I think when we're talking about compliance over the long term, I think that's key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally see that from my gym settings that I've worked in. The people who, would more likely, you're just like, hi, how you doing? All of a sudden they're joining your boot camp class because they're like, they felt that community. So I think that's good on like the training end. And as, someone who might be looking to get into a setting, maybe join that boot camp class. And that's kind of your into that community.
Totally. You also don't need to go like from 0 to 100 really quickly. And I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm going to do it, then I have to go all in on it, right? Or if I'm going to start a new exercise program, then I need to overhaul my nutrition too. Otherwise it doesn't matter. And I think that's a huge misconception. We see that all the time, especially because we're recording this in January. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't even want to bother if I'm not going to do my nutrition too, because what's the big, and I think that's a super short-sighted way of looking at it. To me, if you're in the gym, you're getting consistent 2-3 times a week, and maybe like prioritizing weight training, honestly, that would be the least amount I would have someone do. 2 to 3 days a week, 20 to 30 minutes. It does not need to be crazy, even in your living room, prioritizing weight training. And that's pretty much it. And have fun with it. Like whatever little bit you do does matter.
Mm-hmm. I like that advice too, with just, it doesn't have to be everything completely overhauled. Cause again, I think that's the messaging that we've received for so many years. And so people come in thinking, what diet should I be on? Now, what should I do? 6 days a week. I'm like, okay, 0 to 6 is a little too intense.
Yeah,
So
exactly. They like want it so bad, and they get
yes.
it. Day one, you're like, so, but like, what are you going to be in week number 6 or, 12 weeks in of how are you going to feel it? And chances are, in my experience, a lot of people end up right back on the couch if they go way too fast from the beginning.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then another one that I've heard quite a bit, especially lately is like, okay, I've tried everything. I just can't lose these last 20 pounds. Like it's just, maybe they're on a diet in their head, or they say they're eating clean and they're working out and they're just like, I can't lose it. What advice do you have for someone who might be stuck?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's, if you're doing everything right and you're not getting the results that you want, then you're probably not doing everything right. I know it sounds kind of strange, right? But at the same time, I'm very sensitive to not wanting to do things that make you miserable. Like just because I don't think it will last. There's a difference between doing something that is hard and doing something that makes you miserable. And so if you're in that latter camp of forcing yourself, and I had many years of like forcing myself to eat like dry chicken breasts and asparagus and just things that were like just really just kind of gross. It was dieting food. I think if you're going down that misery path, it's probably not the right sustainable approach. But I think number one is get systematic with it. So a lot of times we change a whole bunch of stuff and you don't actually know what's working and what's not working. So you have to first become patient. I mean, I think that's a big thing, is like managing your expectations. You wouldn't expect to, honestly, like weight loss is a puzzle. You would not expect to learn a language or learn a new musical instrument in overnight, right? And the same thing is said for weight loss, especially if you're taking ownership of it yourself. You're learning about your own metabolism. You're learning about your own personal preferences, psychological sensitivities. If there's a food that someone said you should be eating, but you can't stand it, then like question that. If someone tells you should be eating every 3 hours, but you're like not hungry, or you're starving at 2 hours, like take those things into consideration. I think it's okay to start breaking the rules, but I think dieting is so rife with rules that we're used to just outsourcing, listening to someone else, and we're not kind of listening to our body. And I kind of even hate using that phrase, listen to your body, because it does feel so like esoteric and you can't, it's not tangible, right? So for someone there, I would change one thing at a time, get systematic with it. I always preferentially start with training changes. So if you've been doing the same workout program for months and months and months, do something different. If you've been doing more cardio, then do less cardio, a little bit more weights. If you've been doing maybe metabolic conditioning workouts, change it up and do some more bodybuilding type stuff. If you're doing bodybuilding type stuff, maybe change it up and do more sprint training or cardio. Change it up, because your body, if your nutrition stays like this and your training changes, your body's of course going to respond. And so start with that. I would give yourself at least 8 to 12 weeks on a new training regimen, changing nothing with your eating, and watch what happens. I would say probably take photos, take circumference measurements. I'm not a huge fan of getting on the scale, but I think if you take circumference measurements like weight, waist, hip, you can kind of see what some of the trends are, and your body will change as a result of training. 6 to 8 weeks in, start looking at your nutrition. What certain foods help you feel satisfied so that you don't eat as much crap later, right? What are these kind of like leverage foods, or I call them preemptive cheats, things that when you sprinkle them in, maybe you have cheese on your salad, sure, it adds more calories to that salad, but it's going to maybe prevent you from eating a whole thing of Oreos later in the day or later in the week even. And so figure out what foods leverage for you, so that when you do them consistently, you stay more on track. And so it's what's sustainability, and also just get your mind right for the long haul, right? You're not going to lose 30 pounds, 20 pounds in, 12 weeks. You're going to lose that in a year. And what's a year given the like 10, 15, 20 years many of us have spent dieting and doing these up and down programs and program jumping and stuff? What's one full year to learn about yourself and never have to need a program again?
That was like golden information. I hope everyone goes back and listens to that again and be like, okay, this is why I'm stuck. Like you just gave a ton of explanation of how to like kind of troubleshoot themselves. Yeah. And I totally agree with like, listen to your body. Cause I think I did a podcast on that and teaching that. Cause I had a friend who was like, I know you keep telling us about that. Because in Ayurveda, they're really strong on that. And she was like, I don't know what that means. She's like, I literally cannot understand, like I understand, but I don't know what listen to your body means. So I like that you kind of broke it down and was like, well, this is it. This is how you do it. Cause I think a lot of us think in those regards, like tangible. What can I do? Check it off. Got it.
I never remember, like when I was dieting and stuff and I was really had a lot of rules I was following, I never would think to myself, like, am I hungry right now? Or how full am I right now? Or am I craving something right now? Like those questions never even came into my mind. So this is like a mindfulness practice, right? I was just like, oh, time to eat, time to eat, time to eat. It was just so rule-based that I actually feel like I got stupider as a result of that. It's like funny. I feel like it takes away our power.
Mm-hmm.
We're following so many things, and honestly, like I haven't followed a diet in like 8 years probably. And ironically, my weight and my dress size has stayed the same throughout that time. I think one of the biggest things that people are scared of is if I start to listen to my body, or if I don't follow a plan, or if I start to break some of these rules that I've heard, then I'm just going to blow up and gain 50 pounds. And that was me. Remember, it comes back to the control thing. Comes back to the control thing. As long as I put these foods in my mouth that this expert told me to eat, I'm guaranteed success. And we just know that that's not the case. And so when you start to trust yourself, and you start to trust yourself around different foods and social situations, you're starting to give up that control. And I think that the fear is that you're just going to go off the deep end. And in my experience, that doesn't happen. But you have to show yourself that like you can go for a week without prepping every single meal and being on a plan and watch yourself and now have that body of evidence that you can handle it. And then over time, you start to trust yourself more and more and more. So, and when I was dieting, I was going like this. I was gaining and losing the same 20 pounds every year, multiple times.
Yeah. And these are all kind of your principles of your Moderation 365. Those are all kind of your backbones of, teaching women that. Is there anything else that you would tell people about Moderation 365 that you're like, if you're looking to start, really tuning in?
Yeah. There is, mainly I use 4 different tools. First is again, moderation. That's basically like when you sit down to eat, you're navigating the middle. So it's not, this is like so super depriving, and it's not like I'm eating everything I want. It's like navigating the middle. It's like, okay, I could, make this a little bit more satisfying. So I use what's called satisfaction factor, which is like on a scale from 1 to 10, how satisfying is this meal? Satisfied doesn't mean stuffed, right? It doesn't mean, it's not the same thing. So you're like, gee, Jill, I could be satisfied eating a dozen donuts. Like, that's not what we're talking about. That's like stuffed, right? So what is the satisfaction? Again, I gave the example of putting cheese on your salad or avocado on your salad or eating some nuts or nut butters. We don't typically, these things are healthy, by the way, but we don't typically think about them in like a very light diet, tight diet. Not having a whole bunch of cheese, but honestly, you can use those kind of things again as leverage. You're going to get to your next meal and feel that much more satisfied. So you don't need to overindulge or reach for the Oreos or the chips or whatever. And so the first is moderation. The second is mindfulness. We talked a little bit about that. It's asking yourself those questions. That's practice. The third is the abundance mindset. So an abundance mindset is realizing that anything is available at any time. I feel like a lot of women have urgency. I work with women, urgency, scarcity around food. Like there's not going to be enough of it, or I need to have this now because I'm never going to have an opportunity to have it again. When you start to see those mindsets of like there's not enough, or this, this is grandma's special pie that I need to have because it's so special. When you start to notice those things, just remind yourself that food is available at any time. If you're someone who doesn't share food, like that's probably a red flag that you need to practice this. And then the last piece is what I call DNCs, or daily nutritional commitments. And when we talk about leverage, these are 3 every day that help you stay more on track. So if you have like a protein shake that you love, that's enjoyable, it's healthy, every day, protein, big rock type stuff. So you're not trying to follow 20 rules, you're just getting to
Yes. I think that's key. Again, breaking it down to just simple things first, like let's do it all, let's just start with 3 things, like, yep. Lay out the foundation.
It so is. And a lot of it's changing people's mindset around food. Like, food dieting it's marketing, so like, the best marketing that food has is our own like weird thoughts about it, right? Like that's really like the best marketing that there is for food. It's like our food obsession, the constant calculations, the constant thinking about it, the constant making of it. How much protein, how much carbs, how many ounces of water, how, my stress. All of that stuff, you're trying to manage your stress, and that's way more stressful than anything else. And so finding a way to, again, listen to your body, eat more intuitively, but there are also tools that you can use. It's not just like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I eat intuitively now, right? It takes a while, and it is a practice.
Hmm. Yeah. How do you kind of go about then, just because you have so many different areas that you're kind of managing, how do you manage like your life, your business and everything, and deciding, how much do you share personally and what do you hold back on? Like, how do you kind of go about doing that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking that. One thing that really helps is getting this food stuff under control, because honestly, like 10 years ago, if I had tried to start my business and grow my business with what I was doing with eating and exercise, I could never have done it. I was doing 2 to 3 hours of exercise a day. I was constantly thinking about food. It was a full-time job. Like physically, it was a full-time job because I was eating, making stuff, washing dishes constantly. Or I was thinking about it. And so I just couldn't have done that. So one big thing was starting to automate my eating a lot more. So the amount of time and energy I was spending on it was a lot less. The second part is, I would say around food and exercise, and then business wise, like managing that's really where my biggest passion lies at this point. And I think it's okay to like have seasons in your business, whatever you decide that you like to talk about, whether it's business or mindset, nutrition, fitness, whatever it is, but it's all under the umbrella of Jill Fit, or my company, which is kind of nice. So you can, as a personal brand, I'm really lucky that I can kind of take my interest in whatever direction that I want, and I can just like bring some people along. We can have those conversations in terms of, but it does, like to your point, it does get, it can get a little bit exhausting, because you do have to constantly be sharing, you have to constantly be telling stories and your experiences. And again, those ways are great for resonance and really connecting with people over the internet. But sometimes you have things that you do want to keep private. And so the way that I manage that is, a lot of times I will share something, but I won't share it until I've kind of worked through it myself. I recently went through a divorce a couple of years ago. And, while we were still figuring out our stuff, I wasn't about to like blast Facebook with like the minute up to date in real time what was going on, when I didn't even really know what was going on exactly. So, but once that's like a closed door, once you kind of got the lessons, once you're in a place where, you have a good relationship with that person, then it's like, okay, we can start to share this now in more of a capacity where it feels like it's useful and for other people. It can't just be about me, right? So it's useful for other people. So I only share something if it has utility for someone else reading it. Either they get an insight from it, a tool, a strategy, or they just feel connected because of it. But of course, there's some things that I still probably won't necessarily share, like being single, like I'm dating. So that's awkward. And it just can be whatever, right? So my good friends obviously know, and we dish and stuff like that, but that's not something I'm going to probably bring into Jill Fit, unless never say never. Maybe I'll be a dating expert in like 10 years from now. We'll see. I'm sure it's not one right now.
I love it. Yeah, that's one thing that I think that, even like coaching with you last year, like helped me open up about just being like, I don't have to be perfect. Because I had, it was probably a couple years ago. And I remember I ran into this client and I trained her daughters, and I was getting like a donut, which I don't usually eat, but I think I was newly pregnant too. And so like, I was like, I want a donut. And then I ran into her and she's like, should you be eating that? Like, you're a trainer, you shouldn't be eating this. And I was like, what? I'm like, this is crazy. And so I think like just showing people that no, we're human and we eat donuts too, or, drink wine and, all of that stuff, like just showing that side of it, I think, makes you more human and makes that connection a little bit, it makes that connection, period.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things why Danny J and I started our podcast, which is called the Best Life Podcast, is because we want to normalize a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we spent a lot of time together. We're very in similar situations with our businesses and also in our life. She kind of went through something similar in her relationship. And the reason why we felt so compelled to have some of these kind of I wouldn't say messy conversations, but very real, very honest, very raw conversations on the podcast about things like divorce, relationships, honesty, infidelity, is because we want to normalize a lot of that stuff. We know, because we've had literally hundreds and hundreds of emails from women saying they've been through something similar, or they've never told anyone this, but they had an affair, or the person they were with had an affair. They've been together for 25 years, like all this stuff. So I know it's happening a lot, and I don't hope it's not happening a lot, but it is. And I want people to feel like there's nothing wrong with them if they're in a relationship that is not great, or they don't have to stay in a place where they don't feel valued. I mean, and of course, I'm still an advocate for marriage and relationships, and I hope to find that again. But I feel a lot of freedom from having those conversations, like bearing my soul and allowing for other people to feel understood. Because like you said, I don't think we get to see a lot of the behind the scenes, or we don't get to see a lot of the very realness that is going on. And I'm sure you know that as a coach too, like you have clients who confide in you things that they would never say out loud. They certainly wouldn't put it on Facebook. And I hate that we have so much shame and guilt and embarrassment and self-disgust even around some of these things. And I had that for a really long time too. And I want to have those conversations more, and I want to make it more mainstream and neutralized and normalized.
Yes. I think it's so needed, because I've had many conversations with clients who have told me things that they're like, nobody knows this but you, and it's just like that escape, for people to just release and let it off their chest and be like, oh. And then when you're like, because I have, work with a lot of moms, and they're all, they're like, thank you for sharing your experience, because I just felt like I was awkward and off on this island, and you're like being okay with like being not okay. And I'm like, yes, it's totally normal, and just accepting that.
I think that I do think that we are obligated, if you're in this space, if you're someone who is, trying to do online business, you're trying to build a personal brand, or you're someone who maybe has a little bit of influence. I really feel like it's like we're obligated to do that, to show people that it's okay, to give people permission to not uphold this like if that's your personality. I just never met anyone who's like that. But if your personality is like perfect all the time, that's fine. But I feel like personally, it's my duty to pull back the curtain, and I feel like it's a huge service, and I feel like it is a responsibility.
Yeah. I feel like I can't bond if they don't pull back the curtains. Like I just feel like they're hiding something, and then just makes you, I don't want to invest in them. I'm like, I don't know who you are.
It's so true. And there is this thing that, especially, and I love this because things like Instagram stories and Facebook lives are making these conversations like so much more raw. So I work with clients who are just starting this year, and a lot of them are really scared to do Facebook lives. And they're like, well, I don't want to, I don't want people to like see me in a certain place, whatever. And I'm like, you do realize that like, that's why they tune in, is because it's like your living room, right? Like it doesn't have to be like this perfectly polished, you're in like a blazer giving a talk at it. You know what I mean? It's like they want to see what's going on in the background. They want to see like your partner come in, or your dog run by, or whatever. And I love that is more accessible. And I think that's becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, I totally agree. What has been kind of like one area in your life, just kind of wrapping up, I want to know like what major thing that has like helped you grow throughout the year. So as you've been running your business, what's been that one thing that you've really felt really pushed you?
One thing that is currently pushing me, and I'm going to be super transparent, the last couple of years, as I've been going through my relationship stuff, I've been pretty safe. I've been playing it pretty safe. But just recently, over the last few months, I've been surrounding myself with people who are like really, really successful, in different capacities. And I'm kind of scrubby in those spaces, I don't have as much experience. I don't have as much success. I'm not making as much money. And for me, I'm really, having to check my ego, and I'm really enjoying it from the perspective of, I feel off kilter. It feels awkward at times. I feel, humbled, very humbled. But I'm really liking it. And so that's really growth enhancing for me, because for a long time, I was kind of just surrounding myself with people that I was teaching, whether it was not necessarily clients, but even like friends and family who were asking me about how do I start my YouTube channel and stuff like that. And I was kind of always being the one to be giving the advice. And so now I'm around people who are like real ballers, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, really making me grow, and it's really making me level up, and I'm not playing safe anymore, in terms of my business and the things that I'm trying and stuff like that. So that feels thrilling to me.
That's exciting. Yay. I can't wait to see. And then, because you are amazing at picking good books, like, do you have any good book recommendations for people?
The one that I really liked recently is Donald Miller. It's Building a Story Brand. So if someone is listening and is interested in like, I'm like such a nerd. It's mostly personal development. You can see in business books. So if you're looking for fiction, I'm probably not your gal. But I'm liking that book. I'm trying to think of another one that I just read. Always my go-tos are things like Byron Katie's work, which I know you probably are familiar with, the 4 Agreements. If you're just getting into personal development work, I really recommend Sean Achor. He has a book called The Happiness Advantage. And if you're someone like I was, that was kind of skeptical about mindset work, when I first got into it in personal development, I had never read any personal development books. I was like, oh my God, is someone going to see me in this self-help section of Barnes and Noble and think I'm like a weirdo? Like I was very nervous about starting to do self-help for a long time. And so I was like, well, let me start with like some science stuff. Let me start with some like positive psychology, because there's actually a lot of research behind it. So I started digging into his stuff, and I started digging into like habit change. And there's a lot of research on like meditation and things like that. And so that was really interesting to me. And from those books, I started moving into more of like the woo-woo type books that now I really enjoy, more of the spiritual type stuff. So if you're just getting started and you feel a little bit skeptical about personal development or anything, Sean Acor's books are great. Charles Duhigg has the book on habits. I know you've read it.
Yes, I have. Isn't it just habits?
It's called The Power of Habit.
Oh, yep. Yellow cover.
Yes. And then Kelly McGonigal's book, which is The Willpower Instinct. So those ones are really good if you are interested, if you're truly interested in changing your habits, in terms of changing your life, and doing things that are maybe a little bit scary.
I love those. Yeah, those are great recommendations, especially if you're not woo-woo, because I started off my journey when I was in college with a woo-woo book. So I started off right away with Dr. Wayne Dyer and, just went from there. So I've always been like all aboard.
I still can't quite get through like Eckhart Tolle. Like he's not quite my speed.
He is intense.
Yeah, it's like I'm like I have to read that page like 3 times. But I do like Byron Katie's work because she is like very real, in my opinion. It's not like backed by science or anything, but she has a 4-question formula that she uses that helped me through like a lot of personal kind of like maybe relationship type struggles and feelings of feeling good enough. So I definitely recommend her books.
Yes. And then your podcast should be hopefully up. So this is going to air at the end of January. So hopefully the Best Life podcast with Danny J is going to be up on iTunes. So look for it there. Anything else to add on your podcast? I know you touched about it a little bit earlier.
I mean, honestly, like everyone, I would obviously love for you guys to listen to it, leave a review, subscribe if you enjoy it. We are doing a closed Facebook group. So if you just search the Best Life Podcast on Facebook with Jill and Danny J, join us in there. We have a good group going. We have some good discussions going. We're going to start debriefing after all the podcasts in that group. So Danny and I sometimes go live in there. It's a free group, but if you just like want to be around other people who are like interested in having these types of conversations, that can be a little bit sticky and a little bit messy. But if you're interested in like sharing in a totally safe space, that is probably the best way if you guys want to continue the conversation.
I love it. Yes, I'm in there. It's fun.
I know. I think I'm excited for these couple of recordings. They're the first. I think we've recorded like 5 or 6 now. So,
are you guys just going to do just you two, or are you going to have guests ever?
We're going to have guests. Yeah, we're going to do some alone. We'll do some together, and we'll have some guests as well.
So some variety. So yay. And once a week podcast will it be, or a couple times a week?
Probably as much as we can do. So no promises, but probably definitely
free flow
at a minimum. And I'll definitely pick your brain if we have any bugs or we need any help on things.
I'll send you to my podcast editor who does any of the tech stuff. I'll be like, Tim's your guy. So final question for you. I always end with a weekly challenge. So when I have guests on, I have you guys kind of throw out a weekly challenge to the listeners. So what would you like that challenge to be for everyone this week?
Wow, we have so many. You know, I like putting people on the hook.
Yes, I know.
You know what? Okay, if you are, because we did talk a lot about nutrition and stuff, one of my favorite things, so I have a whole bunch of homework assignments. I have a program called the 40 Food Obsession Bootcamp, and I have a whole lot of like homework assignments and tools and stuff like that. One of the things can be really scary. This is only for people who feel like they're a little bit obsessed with food. If they're in the camp of, I just can't have it around, I just polish it off. One of the biggest challenges and most effective is exposure therapy. So they've used this in all sorts of different studies, especially around mindfulness training. They'll take people who are obsessed with food or people who are trying to learn moderation, and they'll put them in a line on an all-you-can-eat buffet and practice mindfulness, because at that point they can pick anything they want, right? So it's exposure therapy, being around these foods that maybe we're scared of, exposing yourself to. I know for me, it was peanut butter. I could eat a jar of peanut butter in like 2 days. So I just can't even have it at my house, right? That's the kind of 1.0. The 2.0 is being able to have a jar of peanut butter in your house at all times and have it last you a week or 2 weeks, right? And so my challenge, for those of you guys who feel like you're in that place and kind of want to learn a little bit more about moderation, be able to have a couple bites of something without having to polish the whole thing off, have the food that you're scared of in your house this week. So you go to the grocery store, grab the Oreos or whatever the thing is that you're like, oh, I can't have that in the house. And I want you to practice something called intermittent sampling. You can go to Jill Fit, Google Jill Fit intermittent sampling, there's a whole blog on it. And basically it's just a method for how to take some of it and then walk away, and then come back and take a little bit more and then walk away. And the whole time you're doing this, you're practicing mindfulness, right? So if you end up polishing the whole thing off, like, it's not the worst thing that can happen. We've done it before, but this will help you build some mindfulness around that. So the outcome might be the same. Maybe you finish the chips in like 2 days, but you have some mindfulness practice, and it does work over time to practice this stuff. So this has worked so with literally hundreds of my clients. They're like, I can't believe that I'm able to have like ice cream in my fridge. I would never have been able to do that a year ago. And so this is a little bit of an exposure therapy challenge. See how you guys do.
That sounds intense, and I totally am going to have to try. I was like, peanut M&Ms come to mind.
Honestly, like I love Reese's Pieces, and I had this big old bag someone gave me for Christmas, and I would just like once a day, like go buy the bag, take a big old handful, as many as I could fit in my hand, once a day. And it lasted me like 3 weeks.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's a really good challenge. We have not had that one, so this will be a good one for people.
I think it'll surprise you. I think you guys will surprise yourselves.
I think so too. Well, thank you so much, Jill. It's been such a pleasure having you on.
Oh, love to see your face.
Yay.
Have me on.
Oh, yes. So everyone check out her podcast, and I will be back again next week with a solo show. So everyone go out there and spread your peaceful power.